Hey, Colin Bushung here. We're at Magnum Lignum here, and this is Jerry Hyatt, and he's going to give us a tour of what they do here. And why don't you give us a little once over?
Okay, well, I guess I appreciate the opportunity. We're starting in the far end of the shop where we've got a couple of our big tools. Off to the right here, we have our really large bandsaw. It allows us to cut up to 66-inch diameter logs.
That is a huge one.
So it's a big saw. It's really fun when they turn that on. All the lights in Acme Township kind of go dim. Fun to watch it run. It's a big piece of equipment. So we start here with some of our bigger pieces to prep them. Then they move on to the kiln, which is a different building across the road. But we also, in this room right behind us, we have a large format CNC router table, which we use to plane or flatten some of our really big pieces that won't fit through our other planer in the shop.
This is one of the biggest ones I've seen. Can you do a full 4x8 sheet if you need it?
It's 6x12, so wow. I can do up to 6x12.
Wow.
And
do you use this for surfacing tables and that type of thing, or what do you use it for?
It has a lot of uses. We use it mostly for taking twist out of boards.
Okay.
So if you're trying to pass a twisted board through a planer, as you know, it'll just it'll smooth it, but it won't flatten it. So this table allows us to take a lot of twist out of some stuff.
Okay.
I can also carve shapes and parts with it. We do some sign carving and then epoxy backfilling.
Oh, nice.
So we don't run it all the time, but when we need it, it's fantastic to have it. So yeah, that's what this is for. It helps us a lot with just trying to take twist out of really big pieces.
Yeah.
And rough planing, if you will, before we move things on. So anyway, so once we take our rough sawn material from the big piece here, it eventually works its way through the kiln, which is a lengthy process. It goes into our wood storage building, which we'll visit shortly.
Sure.
And then when a project comes along, then we select our materials, and then we step over to the wood shop, unless we need to start here first, where we've got our table saws and our planers and our sanders, and where we do all the dust making basically in there.
So tell me a little bit, like if I said, what do you guys do here? Like what would your cliff notes be on that?
We focus on a lot of live edge material. We focus on a lot of like salvaged lumber or character wood is what I like to call it. I don't have like a Home Depot supply of 1x6 boards. I have a sizable amount of rough sawn lumber, live edge material. A lot of the stuff that we do, the piece of wood is in a state of decay to the point where we rely on epoxy a lot to salvage that wood. So the epoxy, everybody sees those videos out there now, it's everywhere. But it allows us to take some soft wood and saturate it so it becomes more stabilized. We can hit it with color, which gives it a nice accent. So probably our bread and butter at this point is relying on those live edge salvaged wood. We do a lot of tabletops and kind of large format stuff.
I saw a lot of the pieces you have out front, the tables and a lot of the decorative items. And
so we roll with those. We do a lot of charcuterie boards, some smaller pieces.
Did I see a guitar out there?
I monkey with those myself. Those are ukuleles.
Awesome.
I've made a few of those.
That's cool.
But those, I don't usually sell those. Those are gifts usually. But
sure.
But anyhow, so yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we typically focus on. Is really more specialized stuff. I don't do a lot of cabinet building, but we do some. But yeah, things that lend themselves towards large format.
I'm an absolute wood nerd, so this place is like heaven to me, coming in here and just seeing all of this. And maybe you can just kind of give us a quick once-over of your tools and what you do with them.
That'd be great. Well, we talked about the CNC behind us here, so that's a large format piece. It's 6 foot by 12 foot. We do a lot of different things with that. Behind us over here is we talked about the large format bandsaw, which travels up and down these railroad tracks that you can see on the ground there.
What's the biggest piece you can cut in that?
We can do a 66-inch diameter piece, up
huge.
To 24 foot long, I think is what the tracks are.
That's massive.
And so it doesn't get a lot of use, but boy, it's sure handy when we need it. And we have some smaller ones of those out and about, the trailerable kind, and that's what most of our work gets done on, is those small format pieces. And so I don't know
you've
if
got dust collection everywhere in here?
So yeah, we've got dust collection. We needed to make the fire marshal a happy guy, and so we did that, and all was well.
Better for everybody's health working in here too, I'm sure.
It's much better, yeah. It really does raise a lot of dust. It's a big saw,
Yeah.
and it moves a lot of wood. So yes, it's helpful to have that all tidied up. So anyway, this is our wood shop where we keep our table saws. My right-hand man, Jack.
Hey, Jack. How you doing? Colin.
And so we've got the table saws, the planers, band saws, jointers, things like that, our large format sander. So we'll bring the rough saw materials in here. We'll plane them to the thickness that we want them, or sometimes slightly over thick if we're going to glue them up. Mm-hmm. Because we're lucky enough to have large enough sanders and planers that I don't have to get something exactly the right thickness and hope everything lines up.
Yeah.
I can get them in there, and if things aren't quite perfect, we can.
These are massive units.
These are
here.
big pieces. Yeah.
We have some smaller equipment that we use on site, but these are 10 times the size of what we use on site.
Well, we're lucky to have a 40-inch planer and a 53-inch sander.
Wow.
So we can handle some pretty wide format material.
That's awesome. And a huge bandsaw I see over there.
So yeah, that's a 24-inch bandsaw. So we do a little resaw work on those, and that's kind of fun.
That's cool. Oh, wow.
So yeah, we do have probably the one piece of equipment we have that could be bigger is our laser here, and it will do 24 by 18, and we use it to do a lot of logo work. I do a lot of work for Marty Vineyards. Marty Lagina owns our shop, and he owns that vineyard. So we do a lot of coasters and things, and we're able to laser the logos onto the
I
coasters.
saw the Oak Island stuff around here.
Yep.
Definitely a close connection.
Yes, we do some really unique Oak Island work as well.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of fun, yeah.
I saw that table out there, which was the map and had the parts and pieces.
With the bits, yeah, actual stuff from the island.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's cool. So this laser engraver, you can basically etch anything with a laser and
It's basically a printer, a large format printer. So if you can print a document, you can send it to this laser and it'll
I've seen
laser.
a lot of lasers before, but this one seems to have a lot of control in the fact that it doesn't have to be as black. Like this one, the ones I've seen before are very black. Is that something specific to this unit?
You can dial the power up and down a little bit. And so I try to run it along there's a balance between like how dark it is and how long it takes to laser something.
That makes sense.
And so we found kind of a happy medium there where you still get the effect, but it doesn't take hours and hours and hours to laser a few coasters.
That's nice and nuanced right there. That's cool.
So yeah, so our table saw from a safety standpoint is what they call a saw stop, and it has a technology in there where if you happen to touch your finger, I don't know if you guys use those in your shop.
We don't, but I want them.
And so I've always seen the videos where they run the hot dog through.
Have
it's
you
like, oh, that
tried
works. Accidentally, I was cutting something and I'm so careful, always so careful, and all of a sudden I heard something, bang, because I had my earphones on. It's like, what happened? And the blade was gone. I had touched my finger.
No kidding.
And I didn't even know it.
So it saved your finger.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my.
I mean, it was just a tip, right? It wasn't a catastrophic anything. It didn't even break the skin.
Anything having to do with fingers being cut off is catastrophic.
Well, yes.
They don't grow back.
I can't speak highly enough about the saw stop tool. I don't know if I should be talking about touching a table saw blade in a video like this, but it happened and it worked. So
that's great.
So
this is something that we're looking to invest in. A little slightly smaller unit, but these are known to be some of the better saws on the market there, and I had always thought that would be a really good protection system, and you're proof.
And it's powerful. It cuts. Some of those table saws are just not powerful enough to pass. We work on slabs.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm ripping something 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, oak or maple, something hard.
Wow.
And it just handles it. I haven't put anything through there yet that it doesn't take care of.
That's great.
So it's good to know.
Tell us about this unit. What's this do?
So this is a surface planer. And it's a sizable one, as you can see.
Yeah, it's huge.
So it allows us to do up to 40 inches wide through there, a thickness planer. So we can bring our materials through from rough sawn down to whatever our finished thickness is going to be. And as we did mention, it's wide. So I can do a lot of things. I do most of my glue ups oversize. So in case our glue joints don't align, because some of our wood isn't always perfectly straight, like we talked about. So then I can get them glued up and then pass the whole table through and they're perfectly plain.
So you can almost do like a tabletop in this thing as long as it's not too huge.
As long as it's less than 40 inches wide,
Wow.
it'll go through. That table up on the wall there, that table went through here, 16 foot long.
Wow.
And
That's a big one.
That's a big table.
Yeah. So do you guys do like a lot of boardroom tables and stuff like that?
We do a few conference tables. I've got a customer here in town that in fact, I just quoted one this morning before you got here. So we do a few conference tables. I'd like to do more, of course. But big dining room tables. We delivered an 11-foot maple table to a family of 10, I think.
Wow.
And so they were using 2 tables at dinner, and now they have a big table.
That's awesome. And it's custom made and probably a bit of a story behind it.
Custom made, local hardwoods. All of our wood is northern Michigan hardwoods. We don't go out and clear cut. But Marty owns a fair amount of land with wood on it, and so he walks his properties. That's his relaxing time, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he'll pick out a tree here or a tree there that it started to die. A lot of our wood is dead, even down, and it's all being harvested, sustainably. There's the whole carbon capture. People are starting to really get interested in how that all works.
That's a really interesting concept.
And so Marty's written a paper on the whole concept, and I didn't know that much about it. So after I read his paper, it's like, oh yeah, that makes all kinds of sense. How a large piece of wood, finished so it doesn't decay anymore, captures that carbon, doesn't release it into the atmosphere through the decaying process.
That's really interesting.
So yeah, more and more people, that's important, becoming important to more and more people that way. Yeah,
everything we can do that's better for the environment is a good thing to do.
Absolutely.
So tell me about this smaller guy right here. What is this?
It is also a planer, a smaller version of this. It'll go up to 24 inches wide, which is still plenty wide, a lot wider than most hobby shop guys, right? I have one at home that's 12. And so when I first got here, we had this piece, and I was happy as could be.
Yeah.
And then one day we decided we needed something bigger.
That's great.
But it's a great tool as well. It's got the spiral head cutter on it.
I was going to ask, yeah.
And so those are...
So those stay a lot sharper, a lot longer, and even if they do get damaged, you're replacing one small piece rather than a large, expansive piece.
Right,
so it's more effective in a shop environment like this.
Yep, you just rotate the blades. You don't have to take everything off. They're a lot quieter, too, because they're not hacking like a full 24-inch wang.
Got it. Is that what they refer to as a helical head?
Helical head, yep.
Yeah. So the sander right here, I have a really small 16-inch, but this is massive. How big is this?
This will do up to 53 inches wide. It's got 2 different belts in it. We have an 80 grit and a 150 grit.
Okay.
And so we can turn one or the other or both on to pass things through. And I mean, it's the same kind of machine that they use to finish sand plywood. It's really precise. And I find myself, I never thought I would ever be in this situation where hundredths and thousandths of inch count. Because all these things are digital to the 3rd decimal place.
Wow.
And so we just start paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And so it allows us to be that much more precise.
This is a whole different league of tools than our on-site tools. I mean, they all do the same thing, but these are huge and a lot more precise.
Exactly.
Well, very cool.
We're working on a spalted maple desk.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing with all the different lines and textures in there.
It's a beautiful piece. It's a really beautiful piece. But you can see it's kind of punky in some places. That's where the epoxy comes in.
Yeah.
So this is a piece of wood that really is almost too rotten to use without enhancing it with epoxy. And so we've got a pile of these down in the other building. And so, so I've planed these down. You can see they're smooth. I've got them a little oversized. We're about 2.5 inches. So I'm going to fill all these voids with epoxy, and it'll be a tinted epoxy. It's going to be kind of a coppery color.
Oh, nice.
So when this gets wet, this will darken up quite a bit. So the copper kind of blends.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can really accent the color of epoxy. I was trying to just make this be not so, wow, I just want it to be a piece. So we'll fill this up, and it's probably going to take, I'm guessing, 4 gallons, maybe 5 gallons of epoxy.
That's a lot.
To saturate this and fill. But then I take a clear and I saturate all this surface too, so it penetrates and it stabilizes everything. So then that's where the carbon capture comes in. Now it's sealed, and it gives it a hard, durable surface. And then this will be the desktop, and I've got some legs made from a similar piece of wood that will be the side pieces.
That's really cool. So it looks to me like you've gone through and sealed up some of these areas. Is that correct?
Yes. So we seal up these edges because the wood is porous, and so epoxy is an exothermic reaction, and when you heat air, it expands,
Right.
and so bubbles start to encroach.
Yeah.
So it's important to seal up all your rough edges before you begin
Seal it,
your
and then you
pouring.
probably have to work to get that air out of there as you're pouring that.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, I do two things. I have a vacuum pot that I use on the casting. The deep stuff is quite thin. The tabletop stuff, the vacuum pot won't take the bubbles out. It's too thick, and it just makes it worse. But I can run it through the vacuum pot a few times, and it gets almost all the bubbles out. And then when you pour them, air mixes in, and it kind of stirs. So we touch them with a heat gun. You have to pay attention to it. You don't just pour it and walk away. You pour it in the morning, and then you stir it if there's colors in it because it settles. And then you walk back and you stir it again, and eventually you have to go home.
I've done a few epoxy projects myself, and I love it. But admittedly, it's an art that is not the easiest thing to get accustomed to. So you're obviously pretty experienced with it.
Well, I've poured enough to know I've made all the mistakes. That's for sure, and I still occasionally do. But
that's how we learn.
But sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, is what I like to say.
Right.
So we'll start pouring this tomorrow.
Beautiful piece. So you've got it set up. You've got edges on here that stops it from pouring out. And once it hardens up, how long does it take to harden up?
The casting epoxy that I use will harden to the touch in about 24 hours, but it takes 72 hours or more before you can sand it.
Okay.
And there is a limitation on how much you can pour at one time because of the heat. So this I'll probably pour in 2 or 3 lifts.
Okay.
So I'll get it in there 3/4 of an inch thick, and then stop. Sometimes you just say, yeah, I'll just put a little more in there, and then it's like I shouldn't have done that. So we'll pour some. In 24 hours, it'll be hard enough that I can pour more, and it won't blend and recreate more heat.
Yeah.
So it'll take me a couple of days to pour this, and then probably a few more days of just brushing on, let it soak in, brushing on, let it soak in.
So this will be finished in epoxy as well, then?
It'll get sealed up in epoxy. I'm planning on just putting a polyurethane on this.
Okay.
Not everybody likes the glossy look. So
which the epoxy I've seen is really shiny.
it's very shiny. And so you can varnish over the epoxy. It takes away, if you're doing something clear, like really crystal clear, you don't have a choice but to finish it with epoxy. And then if you're capable, you can buff it. But if you spray any kind of finish on there, it becomes opaque. And so you don't see like all the stones in the bottom or anything like that. So, so this is going to be a solid tint, so it doesn't have to be shiny. So I'll spray that with the catalyzed varnish that we use.
Will this have the mica pigment, so it's got that reflective aspect, or is this going to be just a solid tint?
It'll be the mica. It'll be kind of pearlescent.
Okay.
And I'll try to keep stirring swirls in.
Yeah.
But this stuff cures so slowly that it's really hard to keep it. Gravity always wins, and so
the temperature of your reaction seems to affect it almost more than what you do. Like there's really a big timing aspect to that, isn't there?
There is. You just have to pay attention to it. There's no other way to make it work.
This is an amazing project. I can't wait to see the finished project on this. I think that'd be really cool.
We'll make sure that you get a chance to see it.
Awesome.
With a lot of our pieces that you'll see here, they're unique, one-of-a-kind pieces. And one of our primary goals is to try to use dead, dying, and down wood. And in doing so, you come up with a lot of unique stuff, one-off stuff that maybe others would cast away. But it's really important for us to try to take these pieces that everybody else would turn into firewood or maybe just leave on the ground to rot, and to turn them into beautiful furniture. Because first of all, it's cool. And second of all, this is a huge part of our carbon sequestration story. So we know that for every pound of wood that we can turn into furniture or anything for that matter, whether it be wall art or charcuterie boards, or even the wood you build in your house, every pound on average sequesters about 1.33 pounds of carbon. And so when we're trying to do our part for the environment, when we're trying to be eco-friendly, if everyone could just sequester 100 pounds of carbon, which this table is probably several hundred pounds of carbon, that makes a huge impact. If everyone in America could do it, 130 million households, we could probably sequester, a little over 17 billion pounds of carbon, which would be the equivalent of removing 1 million cars worth of CO2 on average for a year.
Just from using this wood?
Just from using this wood.
Wow.
And I think the story is really important, which is, on the surface, a lot of people that are super eco-friendly and care about the environment believe that we shouldn't be cutting trees. And I'm not suggesting that we go clear cut trees or do anything like that, but these trees have lived a long time and they've collected, thousands and tens of thousands of pounds of carbon through this photosynthesis. And if we let them just die and rot, all that carbon will be released back into the environment. And long term, it's just a net neutral, right? So as much carbon as that tree absorbed, it will let that much carbon off, whether it's through rotting, whether it's through burning or whatever. But if we can take a beautiful piece of wood and make something out of it, that locks that carbon in. And so the tree that is growing in its place is absorbing new carbon from the air. Meanwhile, this stuff is locked in. And
so it's encapsulated.
It is encapsulated. It's like a vault. It's like a carbon vault.
Yeah. I could handle having pieces like this.
So yeah, so some of these pieces, like I said, we can make stuff out of regular boards like everybody else, but these are pieces that most people wouldn't use.
Right.
Most of the time, this giant spalted maple would be cast away because it's a stump, or that's actually the roots of a black walnut tree right there.
This is gorgeous. I would love to have that on a wall.
Most people might cut that, 12 inches off the ground and leave that rest of it there, and over time it will rot and release its carbon. And the natural cycle will continue. But we took an excavator and removed the stump and made a nice cross cut on our saw. And at 1.33 pounds per pound of wood, there's probably 300 pounds of carbon that are beautifully adorning that potentially forever. I mean, there's no reason why that wouldn't last in perpetuity.
That is absolutely amazing. And these are beautiful pieces of wood with so much character that, it's whatever the imagination brings is the only limit.
Exactly.
On that.
So like I said, so we got this spalted maple, which the process of spalting is actually the beginning of it rotting, which is why we add the epoxy.
That's what makes these designs.
Yes, that's how that. I mean, it's not that a tree is a spalted maple tree per se. It may be quilted or curly or all these other things, but as it starts to degrade and break down, that's what causes this unique pattern that is spalting. And so we want to stop that process. And we use epoxy to encapsulate it and stop it where it is, and that it creates a unique byproduct, which is this awesome look. We try to utilize, aside from the walnut and the maple, which are really popular woods, we use some other wood that people don't use as much. For instance, these tables right here. This is black locust.
Oh, no good.
So black locust is an interesting tree. It's not native to Michigan originally. It's considered invasive. It has high rot resistance, much like a cedar would. But the one cool thing about this, and why you see these with the stars and the swirls and all this fun stuff on it, is black locust under a black light glows.
The wood itself.
The only tree that I know of that does that.
No, and you might have to show us that.
So we actually leaned into this, and we leaned into it by actually putting some glow-in-the-dark epoxies in and using our CNC to put some fun little things that a kid might like, right?
Cool.
So whether it's the Big Dipper or Saturn with its rings. So instead of it just having an eerie luminescent glow, now we've really accented it by putting comments and all these other things in it. So, black locust is
it the sap that glows?
I'm not, I wish I knew the science behind it, but I can tell you that all I can tell you is it does, right? It works. Wow. So it's interesting that we use it for this purpose. A lot of these are used for fence posts because of their longevity, and because they are invasive.
They grow really quick.
They do grow quick, and it's a very durable, hard wood. It's actually an awesome wood to work with on top of these cool benefits. So this piece here is cherry.
Yeah, I love cherry.
Obviously, everyone loves cherry. Mm-hmm. This, once again, you're looking at this bar top. We could have made a rectangular bar like everybody else, but we took a piece of wood that would probably have been firewood. And because of its unique shape, it's not a normal board. You couldn't go to Home Depot and buy something like this.
Yeah.
So we pull it out, and the first thing that Jerry does when he builds this furniture is he looks at the wood and he identifies what could that best be used for. So instead of getting wood and making what we want to make, we let the wood tell us what we should make.
That's awesome. That's
and
really
I think
cool.
that's an interesting thing that we have going on here that a lot of other shops don't, because they're trying to produce white oak tables or, you know, cherry benches. And in this case, we let this top tell us that it was going to be a rolling bar. And then we used other cherry to build the bar out of. So I think that's kind of a cool piece in that regard, because every one of these unique pieces was built because of the shape it was, because of the uniqueness it was, because that wood spoke to our woodworker and said, you know what, I need to be a bar top, or I need to be a piece of wall art.
I saw a coffee table made out of a root ball in that other room over
That is super awesome.
Really cool.
So we love them. They're highly popular, very labor intensive. The amount of pressure washing that goes into that is intense. Plus it's dangerous for our saws because the roots bring things with it, rocks, various things. So
you told me a story a while back about something you found in one of them. What was that?
Well, actually, not in the root ball, but I think what you're referring to is we found a tree that had a crosscut saw from the 1880s in it.
That's amazing.
And it looks as though maybe the original lumberjacks that were here when they were cutting the old growth forest were cutting this tree. It appears the tree may have not been cooperative and pinched back into the saw, and they left it.
Yeah.
The tree completely encapsulated around this saw. Speaks to the resiliency of trees, right? Yeah. And so we brought it up not knowing, and we use a metal detector on some of these things so that we don't get, you know, large pieces of metal into our bandsaw and damage it. And we identified that there was this tons of metal, and it turned out it was a complete piece of a crosscut saw from the original lumberjacks 140 years ago.
What happened to that piece?
That piece is actually out at one of our barns on the Old Mission Peninsula right now. It's definitely going to be something that we hold on to.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if we're interested in selling it because I don't know in a lifetime of searching if you'd find another piece like that.
Yeah, you'd be really lucky.
And that's the cool part about all these. They're so one of a kind, right? So like this walnut table, I mean, you have to have just the right piece of walnut. You have to have the tree has to grow in such a manner that the tree crotch looks like this. And so when we cut that down, once again, a normal woodworker would take this nice log here and make maybe some veneer or maybe some boards, and he'd take this one and he'd make something, and this would be discarded. But we turned it into a beautiful end table with probably a non-traditional leg set, but I mean, it's one of the most interesting pieces we have here, and to everybody else, it's garbage.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I absolutely love what you did. It's unique. It's one of a kind. This is cool. Oh my goodness.
And it's not just boards, right? It's discs.
I am in heaven.
It's ellipses.
So
this is where Jerry comes in. He's like, what do I make next? You know, and he finds something.
Exactly.
Or if someone's like, I want a table that has a very cool disc, you know, then he comes in here and
we look at kind of what we have, and
disc, you know.
Yep.
So is all of this intended for your projects, or does this go in other ways? Like, do you ever sell some of this off?
I would love to. Yes, I would love to sell some of this. I mean, but right now it's just a collection, right? Because
this is the best wood collection I've ever seen in my life. It's
we
amazing.
are. I mean,
look at this.
I think we might be wood hoarders.
I'm pretty sure you are.
So the reality though is that if we see a tree that's a quality tree that's down,
this is amazing.
Whether it had to be cut down because they're building a new road or whether it fell down because of a windstorm, we can't in good faith leave it there, so we have to mill it even though we don't need it. So in here lies all the remains of the things we've drug back from years and years of collecting.
This is a very cool piece. Like, you could just have all sorts of fun ideas with things like this.
I think that some of these are cool. This one behind you is a giant beech tree.
Wow.
And beech are notorious for being hollow.
Rotten from the inside.
We brought this giant one in here. It's completely rotted at this point, but our intention would be to either do some disc cutting and epoxy, or we've kind of thought a little bit about cutting the top and the bottom a little bit and turning this into the base of some sort of a large stand-up bar.
With like glass up top and lighting on the inside.
Exactly. Yep.
That would be really
So I mean, there's
cool.
a ton of options here. So we got some beech you can see here. There's some walnut. Those ones back there are maple.
Oh, I love this.
So I mean, there's just any time we run into something unique like this. Once again, I think it's super important to know that most people, this would be a campfire. And I grew up in the UP, and when we found these, it was very popular. That's what we bring out on Friday, and we would put wood inside of it, and we'd start the fire in there, and it would be like a big fire chimney, and everyone would love it. And it was great, and I'm not suggesting that that's bad, but it's against our mission. What we want to do is try to save these things.
Yeah, that's great.
So you can see that these Everything in here, even though it looks like it's a lot, is all tagged with bin locations. So we have some general ideas how long it's been drying. Some of this stuff may need to dry for 4 years naturally, because we don't want to introduce it to the kiln. We'd like to do air drying whenever possible. It's better for the environment. We use less, use less energy, use less electricity. So everything is tagged, and the bin locations in the computer will indicate where it came from and when it arrived.
That's great. You would need that sort of organization for this much. This is
I want to believe that everything is organized, but I think we're probably at like 85% here.
It looks pretty organized.
So in some of the stuff like these right here, so this is red pine, right? Traditionally we're mostly a hardwood operation, but the red pine, once again, it was something that had to be cut because I think that it was a power line easement or something along those lines. So this is a situation whether it was not dead and it was not dying, but it was clearly down, right? Because they had to cut it. So instead of them cutting it up into pieces for firewood, which red pine is not a good firewood anyway, we brought it back here, and because we don't know what we want to do with it, we turned it into what's called a cant. So this is actually a log that we're just slowly air drying, and we have a machine over there called a resaw, and that allows us to turn this into whatever kind of boards we want, right? So
and that's how you make the thinner, more usable lumber.
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't want to paint ourselves in the corner by making 1-inch thick boards, and we need a 1.5-inch board.
Right.
So we leave it in a cant form, and we can resaw it to our needs at that point.
So something this large, how long would that take to thoroughly dry out? Do you know?
Well, the rule of thumb is generally 1 year per inch if we want to get down to true moisture level, which is probably somewhere around 12%, 12 to 15%. Yeah. Once we cut it, it starts to dry much faster. So these logs, we're going to air dry, I'm hoping for 4 to 5 years before we cut them. But if we cut them now and we need them, we do have a kiln, which we can use to finish them off.
Yeah, just to speed things up.
Just to speed things up.
If there's something you need to.
If there's something that we need to make. However, whenever possible, we try not to use the kiln. We try to use the natural process of air drying, because it is also better for the wood too. Yeah. The slower you dry it, the better it is, right? So
more even. You can see these are drying out nicely with all the checks that are happening. This only happens as things internally are really.
Yep. And of course, red pine tends to behave this way anyway, with a lot of cracks, whereas some of these other woods behave differently. So on this side here, we have a lot of different hardwoods here. So what I'm seeing here is some ash. Here's another great
example. Probably getting a lot of ash with the emerald.
There is, and we're holding on to a lot of it because we're concerned about where do we get ash in 10 years.
Yeah, that's a good.
So we are hoarding our ash a little bit.
It's beautiful. It has kind of a.
Right, that's kind of a play word there, but anyway. And then next to it is that spalted maple that everyone loves. We were talking about, so we got a whole pile of that. And going through, it's a combination of ash, beech, spalted maple. I see some oak in here.
I see some walnut over there.
There's walnut over there. A really cool tree that a lot of people don't know about is the hophorn. This is the hophorn I was talking about.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So this is commonly referred to in this area as ironwood.
Okay.
And it's odd because this tree can be successfully peeled while it's still alive or recently cut down, but only during a period of time in the spring.
Oh, good.
So you peel it, and now this is going to sit here and air dry. We're hoping for a few years. These type of pieces are highly desirable for taxidermists.
It's smooth.
It's very smooth. This was all hand peeled.
Wow.
Because the bark comes off really easy.
It's gorgeous. Like the texture of this is so unique.
I know, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's used for like decoration, for taxidermy, for that kind of stuff. So this is the tree, but this is also hophorn down here too. Super duper hard, very hard to drive a fastener into, very heavy, but a great wood. We love this wood because hophorn is one of the heaviest woods that we have in the building, and it sequesters the most CO2 per pound, or still 1.33 pounds, but one board is so much heavier. So, we use the adage bulk is best, right?
Yeah.
So when we can make a piece heavier, we do.
That's great.
We do.
I can see this. So like there's kind of that modern rustic look that a lot of people are looking for in their houses, and these types of slabs really work well with that.
They do. They're great, and they're just, once again, I think that even if someone were to cut this in a normal mill, these pieces may have been used. This piece would have been discarded.
Absolutely.
I think this is the treasure of the whole piece.
It's the coolest piece.
I agree. Yeah. So we also, because we can't use just slabs, We also produce some of our wood into boards and air dry them as well. So this is ash. Seem to be running into a lot of it, but there's a lot of ash in this building because we're concerned about the ash borer, and beech in the other building because the beech has a beech wilt going on right now, which is affecting a large population of beech in northern Michigan. Yeah. So we've also cut a ton of beech because they're sick, and because we're concerned we may not be able to get it in the future at a quantity that we're getting it now.
Seeing a lot of oak wilt too. You think that's affecting oak pretty badly?
It is, but the percentage of oak that is affected by it is not as high as the beech and ash. So like if it's 85%, great. I'm not great, but I mean 15% of the trees remain and they repopulate. Oak propagates really well. Acorns are an awesome seed. I mean they move around. So we're less concerned about our oak and we're more concerned about our beech and our ash. That ship has pretty much sailed.
That's sad.
There are some signs of new ash forest popping up.
Good.
So it's a very traditional hardwood here in northern Michigan. So down here you'll see more of the same. There's some big tooth aspen down there. We're not just interested in dead, dying, and down today. This stuff is down from 150 years ago, and so we're reclaiming that. We're collecting it. Some people want it as this. We've used it for mantles. In extreme cases, we will turn it back into boards. The mission isn't necessarily just to deal with a tree that's cut down today. It's to try to sequester and build beautiful furniture that lasts forever out of any wood that we find.
I think that's so cool. Like you could make a really cool dining table out of something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Imagination's the only limiting factor.
Exactly. This is here's a product of your wilt. This is red oak.
Okay.
Popularity comes and goes with oak, but with red oak right now, these are some slabs that we took from some trees that did have wilt. So two things. One, we wanted to cut it out because we didn't want the wilt to spread to the next oak tree. And also it was a sick tree. And so if we don't do something with it, it'll start releasing its carbon dioxide as opposed to absorbing it. And so once again, we cut it down, we bring it in here, we air dry it. The least amount of energy we can use to sequester that CO2, the better. So, this is some long length stuff here. But you're gonna, the thing of it is the way that this barn is organized, there's a lot of the same. There's a lot of oak. That's a long length oak up top there. There's some ash. There's some birch in here. This is beech right here. We've been experimenting with it. Beech is not as widely used as other woods, but we've been making some cool stuff. We designed a kitchen and used all beech book matched doors and drawers. And it turned out beautiful.
This is the best collection of live edge wood I've seen in northern Michigan.
The crazy part is this may be about 30% of our collection.
Wow.
Yes. We have, the other barn is just as full. Happens to have a lot of beech and red oak in it right now. And we have several other buildings that were just air drying slabs. So once we cut them, if we have an empty building that we can use for that purpose, we do, because we don't want to move them around. They're heavy.
We're going to keep this in mind for our projects. I know we've gotten some mantles and some materials from you in the past, but
well, now you know. I mean, and some of the stuff is bigger than others, So, but I think that the boards are one thing, the reclaimed stuff is one thing, but the discs, the stumps, the roots, just trying to utilize the whole tree. We need to be a good steward of the wood that we have.
Absolutely. No, this is responsible. Absolutely.
This tree's even labeled where it came from. This was cut down from in front of the Mapleton Market on 6th of 2019. It's a bleached maple.
That is too cool.
So this tree was actually, and a lot of these have that home. When you look at the tag, on our website, you'll see a bunch of headboards that we made. And the story is so cool. It's willow, and willow is not something we use at all. And there was a giant willow tree that used to be in front of the Holiday Inn downtown in Traverse on the Bay.
I kind of remember that.
So the tree was cut down because of beach erosion and various things. We took the tree, we brought it back here, milled it, turned it into headboards and end tables, and then full circle, the Holiday Inn, which was remodeled to become the Del Mar, purchased and installed all those headboards.
So it's there now?
It's so in a lot of those rooms, you will
That's
see
cool.
that. And you can see the final pictures and some during pictures on our website
That's cool.
of that process. Willow tree was so large, it wouldn't fit in our bandsaw. And it takes a big tree to do that.
Yes. That's,
So that's,
look
I
at
mean,
this root ball there. That's amazing.
That one-
That's the beginning of a root ball that you've cut.
and this one's a little more solid. So the ones that are more attractive are the ones that have all the finger roots in it. But yeah, we'll do something cool with that. It's hard to say.
It's amazing.
These ellipsises are really cool, and they're a great way to, because a lot of them are beech, because they show the graining so well. Beech is a beautiful wood when cut on a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
And sawing, it makes a difference. If quarter sawn versus regular sawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you could spend all day here looking at various things. It's if you like wood, this is like a treasure chest. It's almost like sensory overload in here.
I don't want to leave.
I know. Well, you don't have to.
I do. I have work to do.
This is poplar that we're peeling, which is aspen actually. So we love this. We love these.
Oh, wow.
This is aspen is a fast-growing tree. In fact, the largest tree in the world is aspen because they often will grow with a shared root system, and they become clones of each other. So in somewhere near Moab, Utah, there's an aspen grove that is 34,000 or so years old, and you might want to check my math because I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's something like that. It's pretty close. That has been contiguously growing,
No kidding.
yes, through ice ages and through everything. But it's a fast-growing tree. When you see clear cuts or fires, this is the tree that typically grows first. So it absorbs carbon really fast. It's really good at absorbing carbon. Once again, during certain times of the year, you can peel and bleach it to get this cool look. And what we use these for are bases for tables, end tables and such, because building a small leg is cool, but using something like this that's really heavy just adds that many more pounds of CO2 that we're sequestering in this furniture, right? So once again, going back to our slogan, bulk is best, using this type of stock as opposed to just some spindly legs, yes, it makes it heavier, but also I think it's beautiful and it's better for the environment.
This is great. Mike, I can't thank you
here.
enough for the tour here today. This has been incredible. So what's that? That's worms?
That's ash borer.
Oh, wow.
That's actually
You should definitely get in there and see.
That's actually a tree from the ash borer.
So the emerald ash borer is a species around here. It's a bug that's causing some problems, and Mike can probably talk to this more.
So the ash borer is a bug that's getting in and infecting the ash trees across the central United States. The problem is ash is really, really desirable firewood. So the ash borer spread very quickly because people would cut their firewood here and then go camping across the state or bring it to the UP or whatever it was.
Firewood around.
So as the firewood moves around, so does the bug. The ash borer in itself is not the real harm. The trouble is once it starts to do this, there's pests and bugs and birds and other things that come to get after this, and the circle of life happens, and ultimately the one that pays the true price is the ash tree.
The tree.
So,
I've never actually seen the trails before.
yeah,
That's
this is
really wild.
so this is exactly what it looks like when you take the bark off. So those are bugs have made all those trails, but there would have been bark on top. And then of course birds and things will come.
Yeah.
And like I said, the cycle will continue.
Wow.
This one was harvested well before it died. We knew that it was already infected, so there's no coming back. And we had to cut it down and get it out of the woods because it was spreading. But that was the true thing that really happened, and it happened with beech too. These things that are good firewood, the firewood became the super spreader event, which is great that we can use that term now post-COVID, right? That spread this around to everywhere. I mean, so a small isolated issue became a wood pandemic, if you will, for this tree and for the beech.
Yeah.
We have a lot of hope that the beech are going to recover quickly. They tend to also like to grow in areas that are cut, so they can probably repopulate quickly. The ash is a slower growing, heavier tree. So this is just going to take some time. I mean, Mother Nature is really good, and she's going to bring everything back to homeostasis, right? But it will take time, maybe more than our lifetime.
Well,
But I think
as long
this
as
is a
they're
cool.
making
This is a cool piece,
direction the
though.
right way. That's incredible.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Colin.
It.
Yep,
Yes,
I appreciate you guys coming out. And if any time we can help you with any of this stuff, reach out to us. This wood is here, and we don't necessarily want to hoard it. We want to find good homes for it.
That's awesome.
Places where it can, live in perpetuity and hold its carbon and be a beautiful piece of furniture or art.
I know I'm going to be mentioning this to my customers. I know you guys have been top of mind for quite a few years, but I've never actually seen this facility here with all of your storage, and my jaw is on the ground. This is amazing.
The last thing I'll leave you with when you talk about your customers is, as they're building new homes and they're developing a site and people are attached to trees, the story I just shared about the Delmar and the willow tree, that could be your customer story too. That beautiful maple that they had to remove because you had to put a driveway in could be their new kitchen table.
We love that idea. We try to repurpose things whenever it's possible, and
well, we support that 100%. And so, if you have that tree and we have that capability, and you have the patience, we could probably get together and do something.
we're gonna make it happen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Colin.
Awesome. Thank you.